between legs and how to do that appropriately, where the balance of all the self-promotion versus just trying to get the message out, all that stuff we really want to dig into today. And we're here with two of the best. These are the Jedis in these areas. And I think that we can all learn something. I'm personally in a place where I'm trying to understand this stuff a lot more. And so hopefully I can ask some questions that you would ask, because you're kind of still trying to understand some of these things as well. And so, yeah. So let's get into it a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what you do and your focus, and then I'll try to.
Yeah. I've been with Pastor Franklin for 18 years. I tell people when I first came to Free Chapel and came on staff, Facebook had launched the year before. And so a lot has changed over the last 18 years, including
dinosaurs.
No, I just, a lot has changed in media and communications and opportunity. That's the way I look at it, is, a lot has changed in opportunity. But being with Pastor Franklin, even, there was only one campus when I came here. And now there's multiple campuses. And then you see the largest campus blooming into the online campus. And then everything that happened through the pandemic and the capability to continue to be able to minister to people, being in the media, that was my call. But being able to participate in a ministry that had that global vision, and then being able to use media locally to continue to minister to people when they were closing down churches, I just, that's God's blessing.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point that Brian just made, just in a practical financial way to look at it to people who are watching, how important and critical online presence is. I think for the first time, we came, and maybe we surpassed it, that our online audience outgave almost any church. I know that is happening now. It's beginning to happen now, that our online audience is the biggest giving congregation that we have, which is pretty remarkable when you understand, and we don't talk a lot about giving. We don't say anything much about giving. The pandemic changed a lot of that. We used to take offerings and stuff, and now we just something happened and people started giving online and giving automatically and giving with withdrawals just happening. And then the online audience just started converting. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen instantly. But I'd really encourage pastors to look at that, because we've had some real miracle, massive miracles that have come through our online audience. The biggest gifts that we have ever received in the history of this ministry, one-time gifts, have come now through our online audience. And that's something that's really, really amazing. And so, we didn't start out with that in mind. We didn't think, but, and now, we started offering church membership online, that you can join the church, go through discipleship, go through next steps, go through, get in a small group, online.
Yeah.
All of that, it's been an ongoing process, and maybe we can talk some about that, because it doesn't happen overnight. But I'm going to tell you, I never in my wildest dreams, you got 3,000 seats behind me here in this room, in this auditorium.
Yeah.
But when I look at our, the audience that we preach to online, you just really have to look at like a coliseum or something, in real numbers. That's what you're preaching to. And if you can ever, begin to get that momentum going there, it's really something. And God is using it to expand the influence and outreach of the church.
I really want you guys to talk about this because I'm curious about it. What's the what's the balance? Can you really be really a part of a church? Can you really be?
It's a
Or
great question.
versus in person? Because for me, um, I just, of course, it's just so important for people to be in person. And what's the balance? Because I guess what we're saying is there are people that legitimately, for one reason or
That's
another,
right.
or maybe in a smaller rural area, and they don't have a church that they feel, a sense of that they're a part of, and the vision isn't there. It could be, health issues and other things. And then there's just maybe some people that are just disconnected.
This is a great conversation because it is a paradigm shift that has to happen. And these guys helped me make that paradigm shift because I almost saw it when it first started. And only because of the pandemic, only during the pandemic did it become my friend because I almost resented it.
Yeah.
I felt like I was competing against my online audience. I really did. I felt like it was hurting our church attendance.
Yeah.
I felt like it was something, and I know that was wrong, but I'm just being honest as a pastor. I even at one time, I think I told you to can you block out the areas wherever we have a church and a campus, block them out. And bless God, if they don't want to come to church, then they just miss it. And that was kind of my attitude at first. And boy, I got a revelation when I finally figured out, these are real people.
Yeah.
And they, for whatever reason, we begin to see the effect. I think we saw it way before, but we began to see the effect massively during the pandemic of the potential of what God could do.
And I think
walk us through some of that.
Well, I just think the cool thing was we were already doing broadcasts. Pastor Franklin was already on TBN Daystar and multiple networks. And so when we hit the pandemic and they said, you can't show up, we still had a way to communicate the gospel. And it was interesting because people were shut in. The first year, we saw more new people come online and more new names that we, new people that had never met us before because maybe they were in their own church and now they were stuck at home and now they discovered, us because we were there in media, and then they discovered the online component and could see it live. And actually, again, it is different being in the room, in community with a group of people, but at least we could give them what we could give them. And we tried to give them a great experience with worship and then with a message. And like I said, it was good to be prepared for it because a lot of ministries weren't prepared. They were trying to play catch up on, that's one thing Jason and his team did a great job of, is they were able to get us live and streaming not only on the website, but on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. So all we had to do was make a quick transition, and then we were in multiple places with the gospel.
Yeah.
And we continue to do that today. But I think being there, being prepared and being ready, we already kind of had that broadcast component, but it changed during the pandemic.
It did. Yeah.
But I will say this, it always amazes me that during that period, there would be somebody from Afghanistan, or there would be somebody from London, or there would be somebody from China that was connecting with us. And it amazed me to see the global reach that you could go through YouTube. And again, because YouTube has some algorithms that allow languages to change and at least see closed captioning, they were getting the gospel into their language. And
that's so cool, huh?
And so again, you're reaching people far outside the building, and they're in desperate need of the gospel. These are places where you can't actively preach the gospel. And so these people were being touched, as well as the people here at home in the U.S.
Yeah, it did happen. It was like, as much as I don't like it, even some of the people I know that are the most committed, even locally, where we're at, they're very committed, but it's a real hybrid to them now. Sometimes they just don't feel like fighting the crowd. Sometimes it's it's a lot for a little for them because they can sit in their homes and they've got the setup and they can engage it more. They can study more. They can talk with their spouse a bit more. Sometimes it's, health issues. Sometimes they surface in the morning with people and they're always having to work through that stuff, or, there's a lot of, and before people, I think, would have fought through that. Now I think, hey, it's not that they don't come in person, but not as much. I mean, it's the rhythms have changed.
That's right. Not as consistently.
Yeah.
Most people, before the pandemic that were committed to the church were coming at least 3 out of 4 weeks out of the Sunday. Now, I think that is really the deal. The word consistency and attendance has been, I think, if any pastor would be honest, there's a challenge there. There is a tendency to hit, miss, and hey, we'll catch it online. And I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I want my rooms, like just running over all the time, but I also want to grow my audience. And so you kind of have to embrace it. I tell you, one of the greatest things that happened that blessed me, I loved it. It brought it home. But Jason's dad is how old, Jason?
72.
72 years old, and precious man of God, a pastor. Where's he? In Lynchburg, Lynchburg, Virginia. Pastor of what church?
Family Life Ministries.
Family Life Ministries, a smaller church. They had no online presence when the pandemics, and he's an elder pastor that just will not, just loves his people, loves his church. How many people attend?
About 100.
About 100 people, and kind of tell people, because he needed social media to pastor his people. A lot of them elderly, and just some of those wonderful. That story just still blesses me.
Yeah, it was the night before a Sunday morning, and he called and he said, "We've got to do something tonight." And I said, "What do you mean tonight?" And he's not a digital person. He said, "I've got to figure this out tonight." He said, "I can't preach to my people. I'm going crazy. I've got to get the message out." And so we set him up on Facebook Live. He started doing devotionals, and really it encouraged him, but also all of the people of the church. So you would see them all commenting, all talking through that. And it took 15 minutes. And I think that's the key. A lot of people are afraid. Literally, if a 72-year-old pastor can do that, everyone can do that. And Marcus, I think you said the question in person or online, but since that pandemic, I think it has to be an and for so many reasons. One of the biggest reasons is the front door of the church now is online. And so people rarely come and sit down for the first time in here.
So
They've
true.
already checked out the service, and we can document that time and time again.
Wow.
One of the things we noticed in that, though, we were streaming, but until we had an online campus pastor at the pandemic, thousands of people started reaching out, and everybody was like, what are we going to do with all of these people? And I have just watched people starting small groups. I've watched them giving. I've watched them connecting. You've seen them baptized almost every time we have a baptism. They're flying in because they want to be baptized in their home church.
Yeah. Our online audience state after state after state, when they hear that we're doing the baptism service that I mentioned in one of the other podcasts that we do, like every 6 weeks, I take a Sunday morning preaching time and I let them tell their stories and baptisms, and instead of preaching. And it's one of the greatest. It's just so always the altars. People are saved. It's amazing. But recently, just in the last year, more and more are flying in who were watching online and got saved and want to get baptized, and they make it a special Sunday. And they fly in, and it's just so neat to hear those amazing stories, and it's just continues to grow.
We're also looking at watch parties in several states where 8 to 10 people are getting together. They'll watch the service, they give, they worship, and it's just really expanding out. And if you talk to people, for them, they say that they're not able to find a free chapel, or a lot of people lived here and have moved out, and they don't want to just let go of their experience here, so they want to be part of online as well.
It makes so much sense. I mean, it really does. You can fight where people are at. You can argue with it. you can say it's not good, it's not right. But on the flip side, if they do miss they can't be at church, they're sick, or kids are sick, or just had a baby, or like you said, they're elderly or whatever, then they don't have to disconnect. They can find, they're on vacation or whatever. Then you have people that are now, they're probably more engaged because when they miss, they don't miss. They have other ways of getting into it.
Two amazing stories, and I don't want people to misunderstand what I'm saying, but just to know how God has worked through online ministry to bless the church, even though you can see it that way, or you can see it like what he's saying, and it's truly an expansion of the ministry of people you would never reach if you're not reaching for them. And a man who has a business up north started watching us on YouTube, and he flew in on his own plane, did not reach out to me or anything, and set up in that section over there one Sunday morning. I was here. He went all the way from up north, flew down privately, set up there. He'd listened to a bunch of messages online, never came to me, I shake hands, and either at the door or I'd stay down here after service as long as people want to say hello or whatever, and never came up to me. Left after watched it online for over a year. He said, I don't know why I started watching you. I heard one message and I started watching another and another. And he said, I'm not a real religious person. I'm not a preacher guy, is how he's described it. Yeah. But it connected, and it was the right messages at the right time for my life. Young businessman, in his 30s, middle 30s, amazing, and super successful. So he calls the ministry and says, God's really dealt with me, and I asked could I give him a call, and so I called him, and he said, I want to start giving. I've sold my business, etc., and I'm going to give $100,000 a week for the next 52 weeks. And he's done that. He's done that every week, just like clockwork. That's the most amazing thing to me. And then I think of others that are on our own line that have done things that boggle my mind. I'd never met them. I didn't know them. I would have never met them if I'd only, even they're not like Christian TV kind of watchers and things like that. So it's another whole world. It's another whole world. And God used that to connect us. And these people have become precious partners in the kingdom. I mean, yeah. And they love this church. They fly in, and and it's not just the money side, but yeah. It's truly a kingdom connection that only God can do. That enables you to do things that we could only dream of doing. But because of the online audience, these miracles are happening. And we've had one this year, another one that is just, it's exceedingly abundantly above all I could have ever asked or imagined. That a couple that we're watching online, that's their only connection to the church is online. They started watching because President Trump at the time tweeted out that he was going to watch online on what day was that? It was a big.
Was that Easter weekend?
Was it Easter?
Or
was it the first Sunday? The one of the first Sundays of the pandemic, and he said, I need inspiration, and I'm going to watch Pastor Jentezen Franklin that Sunday. And when he did, I was on a flight from California, and I landed, and my phone blew up, and it was just thousands of people who were saying, some of them saying good, some of them saying bad things, and others just saying, and the team had to hustle because we were warned that it was going to, that it had the potential to melt us down, and you can talk more about the technical
Brian, that's
side.
probably more you could explain.
Yeah, we
that.
had to prepare scalable servers because, again, the number of visits can shut down your website, and we saw that over and over in those kind of scenarios. So we ended up going with something where you reach maximum, scales to the next one, to the next one. So it allowed us to not lose any visitors that day.
But that day, over 1 million people watched. I mean, that's real numbers, over 1 million people watching. And one of those couples was a couple that said the only reason we watched you was because he tweeted and we were curious and said, let's see what he would listen to. And now they have blessed this ministry in ways that it's mind-boggling. And, you know, so God has a plan, and we don't do it for that reason. But boy, if we'll follow his plan, he wants to bless the church and enlarge our territory.
1,000,000%. And those resources, you know, go to one thing, and that's so you can continue to do things to take care of the people that maybe can't do that. And, you know, as you're talking, you know, I'm thinking about all the people that are maybe even in their mind feeling this big because they're not Jentezen Franklin. And I want to say a couple things about that. One is I have watched his patience. I've watched how slow he goes. I've watched how when other people just try to throw the gas on everything. And now where he's at, that's from 30 plus years of media. But the point is just knowing that there's a call to do everything you can to reach people. And what can you do? Don't get caught up whether you can do all this or that story. My stories would be nothing like yours. But yet I can think of a couple that I met 2 weeks ago at our Sunday night prayer meeting, and they drove in. They live about 2 hours away. They watch us online.
Think about
They devour that online. And it was right around the time of our end of the year Heart for the House offering, and they gave us $30,000. That may not,
it's tremendous.
you know, for us, that was
tremendous. That's amazing.
Well, but what's even better is then when they came to us, their granddaughter is in the hospital in Cincinnati. So our team was able to, and it wasn't because of that resource. It was just that they came and they met us and said hi to us, and they told us about that. We didn't know what the gift would be when we said, well, can we go see your family?
Sure.
Can we go see your daughter? Can we go check in on them and just let them know that we're praying for them? And so my point is I can hear those stories and think, well, what about me? But the point is you just got to keep stretching yourself.
That's right.
Moving in that direction, doing what you can do to reach people. And then, you know, we got to look at people that are way up here because you can see the potential of it. The potential is out of this world. There is no limit.
That we have done started small. It struggled. I wondered, was it a waste of time and money? TV for years struggled. It was, I've joked about the duct tape that the guys carried around, literally a roll of duct tape on their belt because our equipment was falling to pieces and we didn't have the money really to buy the cables and stuff that we needed. But God said, do it, keep doing it, don't stop, keep doing it. And one door would open and it would stretch me to the limit. It would stretch. I would say, how in the world I remember when TBN opened, and it was both a blessing and a terror because they're amazing. The TBN, the footprint is there's nothing like it. Same with Daystar. They're amazing. But all of that is extremely, extremely millions and millions of dollars. And we didn't have it. I mean, we just didn't have, especially when we first started out, we didn't have, it took faith. It took raw faith, and it took seeding. And for years and years, the ministry seeded the TV ministry. You know, and we did good. It was always good little growth, you know, little growth. We beat last year.
Yeah.
We beat last year, you know, praise God. And I remember when we broke, you know, just barely broke even.
Well, that's innovating is doing what you can doing the best you can with what you got, right? I can remember that little to me, it was a closet. You had this little room
Sure.
where you had all the little screens.
That's right.
And then you had a little closet that
Yep.
you would go and do the before and after shoot.
Yep.
And you had some scrim, like some, like, I don't know, like some
It was,
stretchy material. And then you had these can lights. And I can remember in my mind, like thinking to myself, like how rinky dink it was, you know, like I can remember that. That was 22 years ago. It was a long time ago, but you weren't thinking rinky dink.
Right.
You were just thinking, this is what we can do. This is the space we got. These are the cameras we got. And the content of who you are is what really matters. So maybe you're out there and you don't have all the stuff that you see at Free Chapel. Well, the content, you know, don't just keep working on your messages, keep working on your anointing, keep working on your love for God,
So
your
good.
love for people, the vision,
Your
and then what
excellence
can
in
you do?
broadcast, you know, giving it, you don't wait until you get there to really sharpen up, but you go at it like with all that you have, with everything that you can, with all the excellence. And if you're at the duct tape level, you fix it up the best you can do it, and you do it. And if you plant, he's the root out of dry ground. And if you plant Jesus into any ground, he's so self-existent, he doesn't need anything from the environment to draw life. Our job is to plant him, and if you plant him, he's the root out of dry ground, the tender plant, Isaiah said, that grew out of desert, out of no support. But you throw him and plant him, and when you start planting him, and you know it's a direction that God has given you, and really, you know, go into all the world and preach the gospel was the mandate. So I took it serious. And I it's not that I'm the best preacher. I'm not the most gifted. I'm not the most original. I'm not the most brilliant. I'm not the most qualified. I am one of many. But the mentality has to be, if Jesus says throw out nets, don't throw out, if he says plural, don't throw out a singular net. But throw out nets and say, well, I can fish too. And if he can do it for this one, that one, and the other one, he can do it for me. There are 3 other buildings in this city that before we got here, there's a smaller one down the road that's now, you preached in last night to our young adults and did a magnificent message, which was amazing. And then there's another building that you could literally put it in one section in the balcony. You could put that building pretty much. And so we didn't get here. We didn't get here overnight. And I really want to encourage you. God wouldn't give a flock of geese a desire to go south if there was not a south to go. If God puts an innate call and desire in your heart, and it's not selfish ambition, it's truly a vision. When God gives you a dream, you can't shake it. When God gives you a direction, you cannot just play it off. You try to. I've actually tried to lose it. But when it is part of his call, you cannot ignore it, and he will not let up until you do it. So if you know you're supposed to grow, you know you're supposed to reach, there's something in you that is just pushing you to reach more souls, then by all means, in every way that you can, begin to plant Jesus. That's your job, planting. Get the seeds of the word out there, plant it. How can I do that? I can do it by radio. I can do it by TV. I can do it online. I can do it on Twitter. I can do it on Instagram. I can do it in person. I can do it with this campus, with other campuses, and just start planting Jesus in dry ground and watch him grow. Watch him astound and astonish you. And one day, after 30 years of being faithful, and 20 years and maybe 10 years of struggling, and then I remember when we were building this auditorium, it was the skeleton, and we had beams going across, and there were no seats or anything. And the Lord spoke to me. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, get a camera and put it right there, and you stand out there and on a box and write the vision and cast the vision and make it plain. We had no TV equipment. I was doing it. This was a massive project. This building was a massive stretch for us. We did not have the millions that we needed to pay for it, and it was going to be a 30-year project potentially. And the Lord said, stand right there on nothing, no seats and no people. We had enough people to fill maybe that much of the church, and these seats were going to be empty according to my numbers every Sunday. Okay. And the Lord said, stand right there and proclaim the vision for TV. And I did.
Power of dream.
Power of a
dream.
The power of a dream. I preached that message. Praise God. Man, that touches my heart. The power of a dream, and how that God gives you a dream. You're never more like God than when you dream. That when God wants to change a community, he finds a dreamer. When God wants to reach a nation, he has to have a dreamer. When God wants to go into new nations and do new things, he has to have a dreamer. And I stood right there and I just began to proclaim the dream that God had given me, how that R.W. Schambach and all that whole story had kind of got us going, a little bit. And to make a long story short, now we needed all new equipment. We needed HD equipment. It was going to be $3 million, something like that. And boom, God did it. I cannot explain it. We came in and all the equipment was paid for. It never happened before. It was always just bumping along. We'd have a good month, and then we'd have a terrible summer, and then we'd have an awful fall, and then we'd have something that hit, and it would, thank God we got caught up, and it was a struggle, and then something happened, and the Lord said, no more duct tape. I remember that word. I was watching the guy in the studio wrapping tape, and the Lord said, no more duct tape. I'm moving you out of duct tape level. That's funny. I mean, and you say, well, God won't do that. You're one of his favorites. That's a joke. No, I'm not. But I do try real hard. and you do too. And I want you to know that God is for you. God is for you. God is for your ministry, right? God is for your business. God is for your family. And it started right there.
And you got to hear these things,
Yeah,
I've never seen
the substance
myself.
of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And before you're qualified to preach that, you have to live that. You have to. You can't just proclaim it. At some point, you're going to have to really stand by faith and say, I've never been this way before, but here I go. And that's the fun. That's when you're leaning on God. Without faith, it is impossible, which means faith is spelled R-I-S-K. And when's the last time you took a risk for Jesus? If you fail, you fail. But at least I don't want to look back on my life and say, I wonder what would have happened if I'd have tried. And I know, like with Twitter and Instagram, you've really been so instrumental in helping us grow. And it may sound to some like, well, that's just stuff. Well, really, it's getting your message out there. And talk a little bit about that, maybe.
I think what's key is a lot of people focus on these platforms and forget about what they can do, how they can utilize them. And one of the trends we're seeing, Pastor, and you and I have talked some, is building a following is no longer enough. And so to where we would stream or where we would post, what I want to encourage pastors to think about as we're moving into this next phase is having a huge following isn't going to do anything long term unless you're beginning to align those people, connect with those people, and even form. That's with the online campus what we're doing. You texted me the other day about a post that we wanted to send out, and you said get it to as many people as we can.
Yeah.
And I wrote back, Well, Pastor, unfortunately, that was rejected, and there's a lot of censorship happening. A lot of people don't quite understand.
There's a post about I called out the 210 Congress people who voted against the Born Alive rescue bill, basically for a baby that after an abortion has been attempted, it somehow survives and is born. And 210 Congress people said, let the baby die. They called it a non-entity. Let the non-entity set in a pan and die. And I just felt led to say something about it, real bold, and say, what have we come to in this nation that we're silent, even preachers? And I felt the call to challenge preachers and say, how in the world, this is a human being, this is a baby. How in the world can we not see how clear scripturally? I don't care what woke culture or anybody else says, they're wrong and God's word is right. That's a baby. And that's a human being. That's an eternal soul. And so, but like you said, it got, we tried to boost it because you only reach about what?
2% usually on a post.
So let's say you have 2,000 followers or 5,000 followers, you're only going to reach 2%. So you tried to boost it in YouTube, and some of them said no.
So, well, it'll get to a point where you might have 1 million subscribers or 1 million followers, but what would prevent them from saying, you're done? 0%. And that's why it's just so important to begin forming them into a community, because we don't own any of those followers. They're there, but Twitter, Instagram, the social media networks, they're going to eventually, we've seen that. It used to be they would reach 10% and then down to 8 and then down to 5 and then down to 2. And now they're saying what can be posted and what's not. So something to keep in mind as we move forward into this next phase of media.
Jason, what I love too about what you, the world you like your father and my father pastored, basically the demographic of most churches is what, maybe 200-300? Is that right? Something like that, yeah. And so how do we break this down? Because when I love to talk to people running 500, 300, 200, 100. How do we break this down and maybe in some practical ways of what you guys would recommend? You're amazing. Your knowledge of your world is amazing, and the experience that you have is people reach out to you from all over the world. I mean, they do, and some of the most notable ministries in the nation, just like we have gotten help from them to get where we are. We love to help others. It's a major part of our culture, is to help others.
Huge help.
And we want to help any pastors that, and we just want to say, we open our world to you as much as we can. We got to keep things operating, but any way that we can help you, if you ever coming through and you need a tour or you want to try to, I know we do that kind of thing as much as we can. And, but what would you say to that pastor that's got very limited budget and, but also knows that I need to up my game in this world? What are the wisest moves, maybe some of them that come to mind?
But I would recommend to any young pastor, get to writing, get ready to be published, get into that world.
It's very good.
And get on YouTube. Whatever you do it with consistency.
All right, let's go back to that first one for a minute. Get into writing.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good. What are you trying to like?
Well, with your ministry, when you wrote the first fasting book.
All right, but before that, I wrote 3 little pamphlet books that were like 90 pages maybe, or 60 pages, little bitty pamphlet books. But there again, it was just a small thing, and it helps you. Once you wade in, you realize the challenges with it. It's like I can't do this. It's stupid. I don't know how to do this. You can't find the people to help you do it. So you just start the process.
And here's the beautiful thing: is nowadays with technology, you can dictate. So you can open up your Android or your iPhone, whatever. You can dictate a devotional. And if you did that every day and posted that every day, and again, because of the technology, you can have a small little iPhone, a little ring light. I recommend getting your production value as best you can, but be consistent. Go ahead and do those YouTube videos, get a following, but then take those same videos, transcribe them, look at the themes, look where God's leading you in those themes. For Pastor Franklin, I'm assuming, that fasting was just something he couldn't get away from.
That's right.
And that became a New York Times bestseller, but it started, again, as something much smaller than what it was.
That's right.
But then all of a sudden, that is what attracted a new audience. New people came that were interested in fasting. Maybe they weren't interested in the spiritual side. They were interested in the, New Year's, I'm going to fast kind of thing. And all of a sudden, new people started coming to the ministry because he had written this book. And that's why I recommend any young pastor get used to, whether you're dictating, whether you're, just transcribing what you've said in a message, start to look at those themes, start to look at what God has put in your ministry. Pastor Franklin and you have
a uniqueness, a niche.
Yeah.
Something that not everybody. When I started talking about fasting, there were a few other voices out there, and there were a lot of older ministers who had passed away, like Derek Prince, people like that who had made great things happen with the teachings of fasting, but there were no books, like nobody talked about fasting much back. Now it's a huge market.
That's I mean, anybody that knows, I mean, that is, you didn't just write a good book.
But here's the point.
Because it wasn't a book, it was your life. And that you've called the nation back to fasting. When I went to the church, be 18 years ago, and we did a 21-day fast with you guys, I didn't know anybody else that did it. Matter of fact, it was extreme. It was like over the top. I love it. I mean, and now we're starting to see the benefits of it. We're starting to see how important it is to give God the first part of your year at a minimum through prayer and fasting. It's
the very thing that that you almost feel like is not something that you would think would be the deal that would catch on. Maybe the very thing that God's raised your voice up with a unique, fresh message that is now for the body of Christ. And so, it's okay to be different. You're not trying to be different. It's just part of who you are. And if you can, like he said, I love what you're saying, Brian, is begin to put in post on what do you call it? Post and articles basically online. And you never know, God can take one of those thoughts and get it to the right person. And somebody calls you and says, hey, let's do a book on that, and but it's so true. What he's saying is so true. When that book came out, it seemed like our whole ministry went to another. So to begin to start books, and I try to do one a year. It's a challenge. I mean, it stresses me, to a book a year.
But I like what you're saying too. Even those like little pamphlets.
Yes.
Even if you don't sell them, just give them away to your church.
Yes.
Let them give them away to their friends. Let them, whatever. We do that almost every year. We'll put together a little devotional. It's a 21-day devotional. We give it to the church usually, and then.
So good.
But we almost always point them to how they can get an email where it's called Daily Bread with PM, and it's the same thing. Well, now that's tens of thousands of people that every day read that email. When they came to me with the idea, I bet they got it from one of you guys, because I was like, don't nobody want to get an email every day. It's like I put all that to clutter and junk. I don't got the time, but I hear all the time how people, their spiritual disciplines,
and that's, I want to say that's a pastor's
reawakened.
Disease. That's a pastor's disease, that people think like they do. and your pastors and your senior
You're on
pastors,
dangerous
because,
ground right now.
well, I'll just say this: you guys do think differently, and God uses you differently. But there are people out there.
What are you trying to say?
Who,
Right?
well, I'm trying to say that
A disease, a pastor.
that a pastor
we're a
thinks
disease
a pastor
now.
thinks his congregation
afflicted.
thinks like he does. And the reality is there are people that are out there desperate for devotionals and desperate for this content.
Well, it's really
Because
discipling, isn't it?
It is.
It really is.
Daily.
Yeah.
But they seriously, it's like when I write and work on letters for Pastor Franklin, there are times when he goes, nah, I wouldn't do it this way. I wouldn't say it this way. And I'm saying, there's a lady that's going to read this letter and she would love it to be said this way. And she would love to take this content because she is desperate for it. And again, Pastor Franklin's a bottom line guy, so sometimes the letters are short and sweet, and I'm building out his message and extending it because they want to be ministered to, and that's why I say publishing is a big deal. Publishing for a young pastor.
Well, I love this though because especially young leaders need to understand that your gift will make room for you. The scripture says your gift will make room for you. And you don't even know what your gifts are sometimes until you start moving in those directions. And the practical side of it is, for me, it's not me writing all that stuff. It's a team that God had to develop and give me and that I could trust. It took me a long time to even find letter writers that I would give a general theme and say, now here's the boundaries of how you do a letter. I'm not a crazy asker. I'm not gonna tell you if you give me this and give me that, you're gonna get a miracle and all that, and you're not gonna make me into that person. So you have to own that side of it. But boy, if you can ever get people who can take a message and break it down and real simple and exactly like what he's saying and get it out to people. So the practical step is to begin to find those gifts. They're in your church. There's somebody, I'm thinking back now to different people in the church who did it for a season and they took it another notch higher. And then God would send somebody, and finally we ended up hiring somebody who really was gifted in that area, and they could take thoughts and I always get help with books. I have to sit down and I have a co-writer basically who I say, here's the outlines and here's thoughts and here's illustrations and I want to do this, and I'll sit and talk and she's recording and we discuss things and get it going. AJ, forgot her last name. Gregory, yes, AJ Gregory has written a lot of books with me, and this is exactly how we do it, because I'm not going to sit down and handwrite. I admire people who do that, and that's great. And if you can do that, great, do it. I don't have time to do that. I can't do that. But what I can do is I take a bunch of messages, and put them all into a theme. And as you're going through, you just start laying out the chapters and laying out. But it doesn't even have to start that big. I like what you're saying is begin to develop your online team. And you don't have to spend a fortune, just like what he said. He had his dad on. But you begin to believe in the gift that God's given you. Believe in the call that God's given you. Believe in the revelation that God has given you enough to begin to put it out there. Just wade out there and see where it takes you, and you're making progress. And the amazing thing, again, if you plant Jesus in dry ground, he's the root out of dry ground. He will, and then you'll stand back and be amazed, like I am, if he could. That's why we were doing this. If he could do it for me, he could do it for anybody. It's a joke to me. It really is. It's a joke that he knew I would plant Jesus. That's about it. That's about all I had going for me. Still, to this day, I will keep aggressively planting Jesus. So,
and we put, everybody's different, but if I have a week the way that I want to have it, I'll spend 30 hours on a message, and then it just goes into a shoebox.
That's right. So good.
I mean, it's just being a poor steward.
Wow.
So you got to
Very
figure
good.
out how we can, and that's where I've been incredibly convicted recently is I'm always saying stuff like, I don't want to put the sermon clips out there like every other preacher on this and that. It feels so self-serving sometimes. And you got to get over that a little bit, and you got to say, I put the time in, I put the work in, I put the effort in. I prayed it down, I prayed it through, I prayed it all around. I've done all that. I know how hard I work. I know.
Cast your bread upon the waters, and in many days, Ecclesiastes 11 or 12, one of them, cast your bread on the water, and in many days it'll come back. You got the bread is the word of God. Cast it.
And
cast it out.
You can't care about the results. Sometimes I'd get really freaked out because I'd be like, oh, I posted that sermon clip and it didn't get this many likes or that many, and everybody's going to see that and they're going to know I'm terrible. Why am I even doing this? And in my mind, I'm like, it's just better to not have to look at it. And I had to get even past that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't, just put it out there. Sometimes it'll hit. Sometimes it won't. I would say that it was people's ego that's having them put everything out. But it was actually my ego that was keeping me from it because I didn't feel like I was measuring up. And really so you just kind of humble yourself and say, I put the time in. It's what God told me. And I'm not putting it out there for a bunch of likes and for everybody else, or I'm not putting it out for this. I'm putting it out because most importantly, in that place, even if my platform has 3 people, or whatever it is, well, is God first place in the least place? Not are you going to give your best if you have the Jentezen Franklin platform, but can you give your best when it's not maybe a huge platform? Why? Because God's first place, whether the platform is significant or major in your mind or other people's minds.
And here's something I want to mention. Jason can speak directly to it, but you put it out there, and you put it out there day one, and 365 days later, that one person sees it, and that's the day they need to see it. And it's out there and it's ready for them. It's God's timing.
Yeah.
And that's why you put it out there. We talk about fasting and we say, well, you fast in January, but you may not see that breakthrough till November, December. Yeah. Whatever that is. But again, it's there. And like you said, you put in the time, put it out there and see what God will do with it.
It reminds me of the times where the ones that you think are not going to really do anything, like the power of short prayers.
Yeah.
You just got up and gave a couple points about prayer, and then I text him. I'm like, it's over 1 million listens. He's like, are you kidding me? Really? I was like, it's just catapulting. You just never know what God's going to do. To piggyback when you said practically for a pastor, how they could get going, my advice would be, and it seems very simple, but get acquainted with your youth department and really spend time with those teenagers and young people. I'll never forget my first Sunday here. I'm from my dad's church, so our Easter might have been 180. So I walked in on my first Sunday, and I'm looking around. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is unbelievable. And right off the bat, I realized there's no way that I'm going to be able to build social media or anything else. I had an iPhone, and I remember going out in the hall and I saw this kid, and his name was Sam. He had his little phone, and I looked at his Instagram, and so I came up to him that day. This is the first week I was here, and I said, hey, would you like to join the photography team? He said, yeah, I'll do that. He probably was 12 or 13. It's not some huge experienced person. So he showed up that night, and we sat down, and he's like, where's the team? And I said, you're the team, and you're the leader of the team. And, we didn't have a photography team 10 years ago, or a video team, or social designers, or all of the departments that we have. It really started because of young people, and our team still is mainly young people, and they're experts at what they do. They know way more than I could ever know. So don't just overlook them, but spend time with youth in your church.
And Jason, when you, for the glory of God, but when you came, I don't know, do you remember how many followers and stuff like on Twitter and Instagram, and what has happened? Just watch.
Well,
when you get the focus on it.
You were at about 60,000 on Twitter. We just passed 1 million, I think, last week. And again, going back to the team, they've killed it, and you have permitted us to grow as we grew. 100,000 on Facebook. I don't know if Brian, if you got them there, but they were at 100,000. That's, I believe, well over 2 million now. Instagram, it was like 4,000, and we're going to hit 1 million, I'm believing, this year. We didn't have YouTube in either one, and TikTok, we just started last year. That's grown over 200,000. So I was doing the math. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, we're nearing almost 6 million people if you add everything together. I mean, think about what God has done. It's just amazing. I never would have thought it. It's been a fun journey.
Well, I love that story though, because people think that you just throw money in. We didn't. That's exactly, and even in this room, if you sitting in this room, you got people behind these cameras. Brian, speak to it. Just turn around and
absolutely. Well,
tell a few of these stories, because you guys need to hear this and understand this.
Well,
this is how you build a church.
We were asking the guys behind the cameras before the podcast, 3 specifically. You have Daniel, Courtney, and Craig. They all grew up in Free Chapel, and we asked them when they got in media. And of course,
Craig, how old were you? 10 years old.
And then Daniel, when did you start?
And he got in the media department doing what, Craig? Running camera in Kid Pack. Kid Pack is our children's ministry, and he started running a camera. One of the most gifted young men that he's really got something. special on him that we haven't yet quite completely
Craig edits the
maximize.
international broadcast every week
Yeah.
for Kingdom Connection.
Okay. Well,
Good Lord.
And then, of course, Daniel joined us, but Daniel grew up here,
Daniel Welborn
started 12 years old, again in Kid Pack.
started 12 years old, took the editing skills that he learned in our media ministry as a young kid, and started his own extremely successful business, making videos for weddings and funerals and all kinds of
Corporate
stuff.
video.
And I want to take a second and say we're going to try to do another podcast on. A lot of times you're like, well, I don't have a great youth department. How do I get a great youth pastor? I don't have a great worship person. How do I get that? I don't have the media. How do I get that? And we're going to bring Tracy in here, and I believe also, just in the way that I like to build church culture too, that any pastor can build anything they want from what they got. That's the old Tommy Barnett thing, right? The miracle is in the house. Don't get out there looking. You got to find, and sometimes you do. I'm not saying that, but for the most part, you can get most, if you're willing to put the time in and take the risk. Those gifts are right there in your hand. And what's that old message? Start where you are. Use what you have. Do what you can.
Yep.
I might maybe mess that up.
No, but that's it. And then my daughter Courtney's sitting behind this camera, and
this is one I'm most proud of, because Courtney came on board, and Courtney she had an interest in what was going on, and Pastor Franklin had told me, said, put her in an area, check her out, and see where she goes. And of course, she came in, and immediately she kind of embraced all of it. And then I was able to put her in all of it, so much so that she left me for a brief period and actually went to another ministry and ran that very successfully. I was able to get her back. She is the future. I keep telling Daniel and her and all these guys, I said, when I started, there were 3 TV networks: ABC, NBC, CBS.
Yeah.
Fox was the outlier that came on board. So, I've been doing this for a long time, and I was sharing with them. I said, you guys are the future. You bring the freshness. I said, now I've been down the road a few times, and I said, I can kind of predict, what may happen, and I have some experience, but these guys breathe so much life into what the media ministry is today. And like I said at the beginning, Facebook just launched when I got here. And to see all of the technology changes that are going on today, and where media is going, there's so much opportunity out there. And but I'm so proud of Courtney, and so proud of where we're going.
Absolutely,
Brilliant.
Me too. Very
Brilliant.
And the whole concept, though, that I don't want as we come to close, but the whole concept of what I'm hearing that is so valuable, and it's the Holy Spirit too. Is when you said, don't ignore the teenager, like pastor, you got it. You got this whole media department in your church. You've got it. You don't know it yet, and they may be 12 years old, but if you would just believe that God is not playing when he called you to preach. He was not playing when he called you to that church. And to see that value in that kid, Sam, who went on to do amazing things and is amazing. If it's the one I'm thinking about, Sam, yeah, it is. He left me too. He got so big time he left me, and but he's still very involved, in helping us and doing a lot of amazing things. Just incredible stuff. And but he got trained right here. And then there's a kid that was in here a while ago that is a sound technician. When did he start?
Actually, he was doing the lighting and some of the tech on the screens. And again, another 11-year-old that came through Kid Pack. And today, he's running our lights during our services, has tremendous impact on our young adults and youth department. A leader. He's become a leader in technology.
It's really hope-giving, isn't it, to realize that God knew that we would need every one of these gifts exactly where they're sitting right now. And so he said, if I can trust the vision to this ministry, I can raise up a generation that can keep this thing going stronger. We hand the baton off when it's time, and they won't have the struggles that we had. They'll have different struggles, but my dream is to hand off debt-free everything with more than all they would ever need to keep preaching the gospel like never before.
Amen.
I just think if they could understand, and even now where we're at, if they could see the young leaders that are doing what they're doing, they would be shocked, because the people on our team are not experts. We've had like 6 come from Free Chapel College. They were here, got mentored a few years. Now they're on staff. You don't have to bring in, there really are no experts. Everything changes so fast. Just look for people who can change quick and know what to do, and they'll make it happen.
And you're kind, and you're a nice guy. Jason is a nice guy, but he's one of the most aggressive animals about numbers. I laugh because Craig Rochelle's a dear friend, and I'm on his board of directors. I go off this year after 5 years of serving. It's been a tremendous honor. But when we started, he got a spur in his saddle about Craig Rochelle growing, and it was like, we got it was so funny to watch the aggression in this team, in a good way.
Yeah.
Of saying, we like to win, we like to grow, we like to go, we got to see enlarge our territory. And boy, that's how you go from a few thousand to 1 million in a few years. Is somebody's driving that engine, somebody's saying, we can do this, we can do this. And you say it's all numbers, and numbers don't matter, but God thinks they matter. He put a book in the Bible called the Book of Numbers. So numbers matter for a reason, because numbers represent people. So
it's almost every chapter in the book of Acts, how they increase, how this, it's
gave the numbers
over and over.
3,000, 5,000.
And every number has to be paid attention to. Online campus, people who are in small groups. And our online pastor does amazing at this. First-time guest every week. Do we have more online first-time guests or less? Why? Did pastor not talk to the online campus? How was the opening? How was the close? Online first-time givers, are we reaching out to them? Online prayer team, have people requested prayer and not been called? Everything matters. It's just like a normal campus, because in my eyes, it is a normal campus. And so if you're just getting started, you may have 2 online guests, but guess what? You have all their information.
So
go
great.
get them, take them, and grow your church.
You're being faithful. God never told you to be super successful, and he never called you to be a mega church, but he did. You will be judged according to your faithfulness. He said, we are mandated to be faithful, and to whom a little is given, a little will be required, but don't bury the talent.
And I feel so strong about this, that what everybody has a tendency to do is say, oh, well, that's him, because there's only a few of you in the world, really. And what I'm saying is, and the reason we're doing this podcast, this is the point, is for it's more than 18 years, but since I've been pastoring for 18 years, how many times I'd be on the phone with you.
Right.
And I didn't want to hear this kind of stuff, because I felt so small. And I was like, yeah, that's you. You're who you, and you're picking up the phone. And I was thankful for that. But my point is it was almost discouraging sometimes, because of how, and that's why we're doing this. There's a few of him, but there's a bunch of us. And he kept pushing me. So any effectiveness or success, I don't think is the right word, but just that we've seen, is because he wouldn't let me buy into that lie. That he kept saying, no, you got to get a dream. You don't have to do what I do. You don't have to be who I am. You don't have to, but you are going to have to challenge that in you. And anytime I've gotten apathetic, it's because I've allowed myself to fall into those areas I was comfortable, and I knew how to do it, and I knew where I was good, or I knew where I was strong. And it was him that kept pushing me. And And that's hopefully what we're doing for you right now, is not trying to say be this or be that.
Exhibit A of what we're talking about is Seven Hills and what God's doing there. And it is absolutely astounding what the Holy Spirit is doing in that church. I mean, and in your youth group, everything just exploding and reaching no hype, no crazy, just hard work and excellence and getting out there and getting the message out there, being creative, same principles that we did to get the attention of the community. By little, you taking the ground, you're possessing the ground, but it's been supernatural and it's been so rewarding. And that's why we're doing this. That's why we're doing this podcast. Is you talking about two guys that I saw in him myself. And that's why I felt, to push you. I saw myself, and I see it in those who are watching us right now. And no, you may not be called to do, but you certainly, God is for increase and growth.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly he is. And there's something I believe in us that has to have that to feel fulfilled. Some of it. You can't have it all the time, but I need some wins. I need it.
Well, yeah.
And that's God. That's God, right? I mean, that's God in us saying, I want you to win.
Absolutely. And, that's the whole point, is when you get the win, if you're getting the win saying, oh, look at my win.
Yeah.
But if you're getting the win to say, okay, I a lot of times with this stuff, you're dying behind the scenes. I mean, you are dying 1,000 deaths behind the scenes. And when you get up there, there's no sense of ego, because that outside of God somehow doing anything, but then you get up there and you truly know he made it live. I served God by putting everything I could into it, but he breathed on it. And then you get there, and once again, you keep finding another way to go back into an area where you don't know anything. The chance of failure is high. The chance of not making it is, like you're talking about writing a book, and I'm sitting here putting all this stuff down because I know what I'm supposed to do. And I've just been afraid because I don't want to fail. I don't want to fall short. I don't want to do it and nobody read it. And then I'm also
it really is
questioning my judgments. I judge other guys when I'm like, why are they writing a book?
Right.
Like, what's the point?
Right.
It's like they're getting ahead of themselves in my mind. And then I'm like, well, it's my own ego. At least they're believing in themselves. At least they're going for it, and hearing you guys talk and that's what we want to happen. The dream should beget dreams. The dreamer should be inspired. And that's what happens when I get around you or these guys, is okay, you're right. I sell myself short too much. I give all myself the excuses on, well, there's so many other people. I don't want to be an echo. What's the point? I mean, really, what's the point? Let me just build my church. That's my bean patch, as you would say. I'm just going to be faithful there, but be careful with that you still need to get some areas where you're like, I probably am going to fail here, and I've got some of those right now, I'm like, I'm probably not going to do it, but I'm okay with it because I'm not going into it to succeed. I'm going into it to say, God, if you want to do it again, I was the underdog every other time too.
That's right.
So, if you want to do it again, I'll give it back to you. I will. I'll give it back to you, and I'll treat people right along the way, like you've taught me. I'll be kind along the way. I won't get big in my head along the way, but I'll honor you with it. And it's just so.
The joy of looking back to and seeing the different seasons and seeing to and being so incredibly appreciative of realizing I could not have done it without Brian Smith, without Jason Vernon, without these amazing people that are in this room, and thousands more actually that make it happen. And to know that God had such a magnificent plan for his life, in his life, that that's the stuff that we're not that, we don't have the sense to put all that together, but God does.
Yeah.
And all he needs is simple obedience and dream again.
And I think
Don't
we should
give
be
up.
doing that together, right?
I felt like quitting so many times. I felt like giving up. I felt like quitting TV so many times. Now that's the biggest revenue thing, in the ministry. But I felt like quitting. So many times. Just everything you just said. I'm not who do I think I am? These guys are really amazing. Why isn't everything not lining up for me? And it didn't for years and years. It didn't. It was a struggle all the time. And so that's a grace. It really is a grace. But I love that you're starting. TBN called you, and other networks. Daystar has reached out, but TBN particularly, which is a major market, and you can't kick those doors in. You can't just do that. The money doesn't make that happen. Matt called you to he's going to be starting on TBN in a few weeks, and it's just so exciting to me to see that God, if I inspire that, to God be the glory. I'll cast my crown. But that brings me more joy than me doing it now. It really does. It's kind of weird. It's like I love what God's doing, but it's kind of like what you're saying, and finding another generation and raising them up, and then saying, such as I have, give I unto you. Get up and do a miracle for your generation. Because he didn't call usually an older generation to reach a younger generation. You can span the generations.
Yeah.
And
that's what it says. David served his generation. And fell asleep. There's only one generation you can serve.
So
right?
Somebody's got to be a dreamer in your generation.
Yeah. What's that scripture? Old men dream dreams.
Old men dream dreams, but young men see visions, and dreams are bedded in the past. You'd start talking to an old person. I remember when the Holy Spirit did this.
Wow.
And it's always about what they've seen. And that's fine. That's beautiful, because there's a faith that I've seen him do it before. He can do it again. But young men see visions, and vision is about the future. They understand a different concept. And rarely is it, you can reinvent yourself. That's one thing that I have done. I mean, if you'd have told me I'd be preaching in jeans and stuff and all that, but I do things purposely because my wife likes me to look right. But beyond that, I do it because I really want to reach people and I want my ministry to span generations. I want to stay relevant. I want to stay up to date. I love to talk to young people, surround myself with young people. The older I get, the more I want young people around me, just because
Absolutely.
You're learning, you're noticing, some of it aggravates me, some of it ticks me off sometimes, and I find myself being an old cranky man sometimes. That why no, they're just like I was when I was coming up, and the older guys, it's just how it is.
Yeah.
So I would say to anyone like a 40, 50, 60-year-old pastor, it's not too late to jump into this thing of taking it serious. And like your dad, 72 years old, and started his online ministry. It was the most precious thing. I love that. It was the most precious thing. And he'd call Jason and be so excited that he crying, and saying the people are they're commenting, and we started this and started that online.
Yeah,
love it.
And he actually retired this year and raised up a young pastor that he had spent a lot of years building up. And the young pastor has obviously a further vision. So they're online. They've redid the stage. He calls me and he'll say, well, they redid the stage and all that. I was like, yeah, Dad, but remember now, he's the young guy coming up. And he was like, well, it's reaching more people. And so
there you go.
It's just beautiful.
Sacred cows make good hamburgers.
That's it. That's it.
We'll
Leave the
close.
piano 1 inch at a time. Right?
I
Would
know.
you pray for just the pastors that
Absolutely.
and the people, just the dream,
Lord, I just pray right now for pastors that feel like they're all alone and they need a media-minded person around them right now. They need a online, Instagram, Twitter kind of person right now. And that person might be the teenager in their own family, the son, the daughter that they, or a kid in the youth group, or Lord, I just pray that you would open our minds, that you would open our hearts, that you would give us your eyes and let us see what is in the house, and just